Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying these medieval Irish videos because I got another one for you today and I'm going to keep making them anyway. The last one I did was Tuchfachaden. It was in 4 parts. This one will not be in 4 parts, thankfully. If you haven't seen it, you can find them all on my channel, and I am, as always, taking requests, although I may ignore them if I don't know a text well enough to talk about it. So today I'm going to talk about Merugud Uilix Maic Leirtis, which is a bit of a weird one because it's not, strictly speaking, a medieval Irish text. It's a medieval Irish retelling of the Odyssey. It's very much a retelling, not a direct translation. For starters, it is less than 400 lines long. So it's a lot shorter than the Odyssey itself. It is also a prose text rather than verse, but that's pretty typical for medieval Irish literature. They don't really tell stories in verse during this period. Most texts are prose or prosometric, meaning prose with a few bits of verse thrown in, so it's not unusual that this one is prose, but it does mark it out from the Odyssey itself. Now, despite my couple of editions here, I haven't actually read the Odyssey all the way through. I'm currently 3 books into Emily Wilson's translation and really enjoying it, but I am more familiar with the medieval Irish version than with the original, which is a backwards way of coming at it, but I'm enjoying the process. So some of you who've done more classics than me may be able to bring more to this than I could, and some of you who've never done any classics, don't worry, you don't need to. So let's dive right in. I'm going to use the name Uilix instead of Odysseus or Ulysses because it's interesting that the writer knocks off that last syllable. It tells us more about the textual transmission and so on, but the fact that it's Uilix and not Odyx or something suggests they're coming from Latin sources rather than Greek, because the Latin sources call him Ulysses. The title, Merugud Uilix, means the going astray of Uilix Maic Leirtis, or the wanderings of, so that's where that comes from. So Troy has been destroyed, most of the Greeks have gone home, and Uilix is on his way to doing the same. He's travelling till he's almost at Ithaca. He can see the mountains of his own land in the distance. I don't actually know if there are mountains in Ithaca, but there are in the Irish version. I'm not looking forward to this, he tells his men. My wife will have married again by now, and there's going to be another king over my kingdom, and I'm going to go home and find that everything I worked for is just in somebody else's hands. Not to mention the fact that being at war for 10 years has really not done me any favours. I mean, Penelope's going to take one look at me and just reject me outright. And his men are like, we're all in the same boat here. I mean, literally, they're in a boat. But all of our wives will have married again. You're not the only one facing this. As they're saying this, the wind picks up and drives their boat back out to sea. They got so close enough to touch Ithaca, and they're being blown away again. They're adrift for a full year before they finally come to another island. If you know any medieval Irish voyage tales, you know they tend to feature a series of islands on which different things happen. This does the exact same thing, it is just a voyage tale. So the island is inhabited by huge woolly sheep. Given that they've been on the ocean for a year, they're probably very sick of fish, which is likely why they immediately kill 3 sheep, start roasting them, even while they're still putting up their tents. They stay there for 3 days and nights, eating their fill of mutton, having a grand old time, and eventually Uilix is like, okay guys, this has been great, but we need to go. And they're like, why bother? We've got enough food here to last us till the end of time. We may as well stay. You'd prefer staying here to going back to your own country, he says. Well, we'd prefer staying here than following you to our deaths, they say. I mean, how many of your men did you lose at Troy? Oh, what's that? Yeah, I thought so. But they do get back on board the ship, because although his men grumble at him throughout this text, they do still follow him, and they travel for another year before they come to a second island. Not long after arriving, they encounter a huge mountain of gold in the middle of the island. Okay, we take it back, says the crew. This was a great idea, this is great, look at all this gold. Yeah, I'm not sure this is great, says Uilix. Anyway, didn't you get enough treasure from Troy? But they ignore him and start gathering up the gold, and they're midway through shoveling it into their bags and trying to figure out how many necklaces they can wear at once when the Cyclops approaches. The Cyclops, or however you pronounce that old Irish word. Now you can tell he's an enemy because instead of asking them their names and what news they bring, he just marches right in amongst them and grabs some of the men, squeezing them so hard that their bones shatter and obviously they die. So, you know, he's rude and he also kills them. Once he's killed a fair number of the crew, he scoops up 9 of those who are left, including Uilix himself, and begins to walk away. Now, Uilix is a cunning, right, clever man, which is how he realises he's been picked up by a Cyclops. I mean, personally, I wouldn't think you need to be that clever to realise that, but that's what the text says. So he wriggles his way free and runs back to the rest of his crew, seeing his 8 men being taken away in the distance. And he gets back to his ships where there's 9 men still there, so 9's a big deal in this text apparently, and explains to them what's happened. Well, they say, well, we've got the gold, we may as well just cut our losses and go. We can't, says Uilix. It wouldn't be right for me to leave my men. I need to find out where he's taken them, because I'm really sad that they're gone. I need to get them back. Yeah, it's very sad, says his crew, but we're mostly just glad that you're not dead too, so can we go before you do something to change that? Uilix, however, goes in search of the Cyclops. Now, if you're familiar with Homer's Odyssey, you might notice that Uilix here is portrayed in a slightly more positive light than Odysseus, or rather he seems to care a lot more about his crew and he's more invested in their safety than in the Odyssey. He's the one who urges caution rather than being led by greed and wanting more treasure. Now he's on a quest to get back those who were taken from him, and he finds them in a cave looking terrified. "Comrades," he says. Actually, this is only one translation of the phrase he uses, which is more literally translated as "men of my companionship." But Soviet Odysseus amuses me, so we're gonna go with comrades. "Comrades! You're in grave danger here," he says. "That we are," says the crew, "and you should stay out of it." "I can't do that until I've fought the Cyclops," he says. "And how are you gonna do that?" They say. "Your spears aren't sharp enough, your arm isn't strong enough, nothing you can do will make a difference to this guy. He is huge, he is fierce, he will kill you." "Can you climb over him from where you are?" says Uilix. "Have you seen the size of this guy?" They say. "You have to walk 3 paces just to get between his nipples." I don't know why they measure things in nipples, but they do. "I'm taking that as a no," says Uilix. "But you're wrong, he's asleep. That makes him like 50% easier to defeat in any way. You should find it easy to go past him. Just get up and climb over him. If you like breathe in really deep and bring all that breath to the top of your lungs, you'll be lighter. You'll be able to go over him without disturbing him. Because, you know, that's how biology works." So the men get up and climb over the Cyclops, who is so huge that there are 3 paces of each of them between his nipples, and there they are, on the other side. "Now," they say, "let's go." "No," says Uilix, "not until I've fought him." So he goes up to the Cyclops, who of course has one huge eye in classical tradition, and puts the point of his spear against his eye and shoves it in. Ow. And from it bursts a lake of water, like so much liquid that Uilix nearly drowns and has to think fast to save himself. And the Cyclops is thrashing around, his arms and feet like just giving such a beating to the cave so that the whole mountain is shaking. He's trying to find out who hurt him, he's like reaching around, but Uilix and his men have already made good their escape. And they run back to their ships all the way with the gold. At this point we're told that one member of the crew left them, and this was the guy who ran into Aeneas during the Aeneid. This is one of our major clues that the writer, if he had access to classical texts, was working from things like the Aeneid rather than from the Odyssey itself, also because no one in the medieval West had access to Homer in the original until a lot later, and although this is a late Middle Irish text, so not nearly as early as Tuatha or whatever, it's not late enough to have had Homeric Greek just lying around. Anyway, they spend another year on the sea and only 9 of them survive it, the rest get sick and die. And when they reach a new island, Uilix goes ashore and encounters some young shepherds with their flock. Now he's a clever man, Uilix, it's one of his defining features, and he speaks a lot of languages. Every time he goes to a new country he learns the language there and then he can speak to people in their own tongue, he can ask tidings of them. Unlike the Cyclops who, if you remember, did not ask tidings of anyone before he started smashing them. So Uilix not only is courteous, but he goes above and beyond and learns the language and asks tidings in people's own tongue, which suggests he's a wee bit different from the classical idea of a raider of cities, though cleverness is always one of Odysseus's traits. So he greets these shepherds in their own language, and they tell him that the ruler of that island is the judge of truth. Or possibly a judge of right, the word can mean either, but judge of truth sounds better, so I'm going to go with that, just bear in mind that double meaning. "What kind of truth does he deal in then?" says Uilix, who is intrigued by this. "Well," they tell him, "anyone who learns from him will reach their country at once." "Well then," says Uilix, "I guess I better learn from him." "You can't afford it," they tell him. "He won't teach you for a single day unless you pay 30 ounces of gold." Ah, student loans. We've all been there, even Odysseus apparently. "Anyway, who are you?" they say, once they've finished casting aspersions on his wealth or lack thereof. "Oh, I'm one of those who escaped Troy," he tells them, which is a sneaky thing to say, because it's not exactly untrue. He did escape the Trojan War, but he's being very reticent about which side of that war he was on. So he goes back to his ship and reports on the situation to his men. He's intent on learning from the Judge of Truth, but he needs to persuade all of them that it's worthwhile. Apparently Soviet Odysseus believes in consensus decision making, but they're not convinced. "We're old and bald," they say. "Our gold's all we've got left. What good will it do to learn from this man? We'd be better off keeping the treasure." "But if you die," says Uilix, "you'll lose all your money anyway. What if he can tell us how to not die? Wouldn't that be better?" Eventually he convinces them and they go into the fortress and explain that they've come to learn. They recount the difficulties they've had on their journey so far, and the Judge of Truth, while sympathetic, does want some assurance that they've got the cash. When they assure him that they do, they're given beds and food for the night and they settle in. The next day they get up and they go and see the Judge of Truth, and before they start they weigh out their 30 ounces of gold, and then he gives them the first lesson. "Imagine your siblings," he says, "all 9 of you, one father, one mother, and one guy who'd killed both of them. Your first instinct would be to kill him, right? I say unto you, don't. Discuss it with each other 3 times until you're sure that all of you agree. If you still agree, then you can kill him. But if you find yourself in this kind of tricky situation and there's no one to discuss it with, then hold your breath, count to 3, think about it 3 times with yourself before you come to a decision. Then if you still want to kill him, you can do it. Just think before you act. Go on, they say. This is interesting stuff. No, that's it for the day. So they leave and go back to their rooms. That was a waste of money, says the crew to Uilix. But at least the food is good, because if they had great food the night before, it's even better tonight. Which kind of makes up for the extortionate price of education on this island. Not quite. The next day they go back, produce another 30 ounces of gold, and the Judge of Truth says to them, when you set out on a journey, don't take shortcuts or side roads, just stick to the main path. Go on, they say. No, that's all. And back in the house, the crew says to Uilix, I knew this was a waste of money. You don't know that, says Uilix. It could turn out to be good advice. So on the 3rd day, after another night of feasting, they weigh out their cash and await their 3rd lesson. Do you see the sun? Says the Judge of Truth. We see it, they say. No matter how urgent your errand, never go out earlier than this, he says. Wait until the sun's this high before you set out on the path. Go on, they say. No, he says, and that's it, that's the end of my lessons for you. Tomorrow you'll leave, but don't do so before you've spoken to me. I've got a few more things I want to say. So was this education a waste of money? Does Uilix ever reach his homeland, where Penelope, his wife, is waiting for him? Do his crew get fed up of being dragged around by him and end up killing him before they get there? We will find out in another video. I hope you're enjoying this video series. I'll be back ASAP with more of Merugud Uilix, but in the meantime you can find me on social media. There's links to all of that in the description, and you can drop any questions or feedback in the comments. If you've learned something from this video and want to support my research, there's also a link in the description to my Ko-fi account where you can leave me a tip. Otherwise, I will see you next time for more of this story. Bye bye!